Hey, this is Nick Milavoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where each week we're talking about one of the 100 guitar players we think you should know. Today, we're talking about none other than Telemaster, Danny Gatton. And we have another Telemaster here to talk about Danny. That is none other than Scott Metzger, who was recently featured in Premier Guitar with his band Lamp.
That's right. We're so excited to have Scott. It worked out great. He's like, can I just call in and leave a voicemail? And we're like, are you going to call in right now? He's like, yeah. They're like, just hop on. Let's just do this. It was great.
It all worked exactly as it was supposed to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Before we talk to Scott, we want to remind you, you can call, send us a voicemail, or send us a text to 319-423-9734. We love to hear from you. You can also send us an email to 100guitarists@premierguitar.com. And wherever you're checking us out, whether it's on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, be sure to like this podcast, subscribe, and rate and review us.
Dig it. And today's episode is sponsored by Keeley Effects, Keeley Electronics. We all know Robert Keeley, legendary pedal maker. And they make the Octaside, the Halo, the Zoma, the Rotary, the 4-in-1 series, a bunch of stuff. But what we're going to do, we're going to have a little unboxing.
Man, I don't even know what you have
Don't even know what I have in here. We're going to unbox
right.
it. I'm not going to show you the thing that we're in surprise. But let's see what this one is. Oh, we have
hell
Rotary.
Yeah.
All right. We have the blend, the drive, the mid boost, the speed. I appreciate the large knob.
Yeah, that's a classy looking knob.
That's foot controllable, analog.
Mm-hmm.
Analog control right there.
And I believe we saw the Rotary in a recent episode, didn't we? We saw it in
was it in Trey's?
In Trey's rig, I
Trey's
believe.
rig.
Robert Keeley posted some pictures of Trey's rig, and there was a Rotary in there.
Stereo input outputs, boom boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's one of the newer ones. I think we reviewed this recently. That's why it's hanging out here. We're gonna open one more here. Let's see what's in this one. I do love their little pedal koozies. You get free koozie there. The Zoma. This is the one I'm probably most interested in.
Stereo reverb and trem.
Stereo reverb and trem. You have rate, depth, tone, tremolo reverb, big foot knob. Controllable knob there. Mm-hmm. Stereo ins and outs. The Zoma. I think this was also in Trey's rig.
I think it was, wasn't it?
I do like the slight slant of the pedal there.
Yeah.
So that way, a little easier to hit that foot switch. And I bet you that light is bright as hell, too. So thank you, Keeley. Thank you, Robert, and all the crew down there in Oklahoma.
That's right. And if you want more information on Keeley, head over to rkfx.com.
That's right. This one, I'm going to plug this one in right now. This is Zoma.
Hey.
I got to try that out.
All right. So here's Scott, and we're talking about Danny Gatton. All right. Well, Scott, thank you for being here with us to talk about Danny Gatton. So recently, you and I had a talk for a feature I wrote about you and your band Lamp. And, when I was writing it, I put in there, I was talking about, your telemasterness and telemastery, I should say. And I likened you to a bunch of hotshot telecats. And then it's like, here we are. We're talking about Danny Gatton. And when I said, who should we talk about? Who should we need to have you on an episode? And it's like, of course, we should have you on an episode about like one of the Telemasters, because you've got this language down. You've got this. You've studied this. So it's like, I'm so glad that this worked out for you to be here to tell us some Tele tips.
Oh, well, thanks.
How many more T's could you use in that intro, Nick?
What's that?
How many more T's could you use?
I was working hard.
All right, good.
Thanks so much for having me and that outrageous intro. That was great. Thank you. I'm not worthy.
So, Scott, tell us, as we kind of start with all of these, when did you first become aware of Danny Gatton?
I became aware of Danny Gatton, I'm going to say about 2008, 2000. Well, no, that's not true, actually, because I did have, in terms of me studying what he was doing on the instrument, I'm going to say 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, and really getting into it. And then kind of going through an obsessive period a few years later with Gatton when I realized he is in rarefied territory in terms of having the Telecaster vernacular down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can't really think of anybody else that has it so fluidly as he does. But my first experience with him was getting a CD from my band director, my high school band director, Mr. Smith. When he saw that I was taking an interest in guitar, he was kind enough to bring me a copy of one of his favorite CDs, which at the time had just come out, which was Danny Gatton and a Philly guy, Joey DiFrancesco, organ player.
Relentless.
You guys, exactly. That's the
Yeah.
record. Everybody knows it, right? And I gotta say, at the time, I think it went over my head. It did not have a big impact. I did not dive in, and I don't think that I had the reaction that Mr. Smith was hoping that I would have at all. I kind of just blew right by it. And, you know,
So Mr. Smith, band director, was hoping to blow a young Scotty Metzger's mind. Didn't quite get the reaction he wanted. So you said, I'm really surprised. 2008 is when it really started to sink in.
well, the Relentless did not connect. And then fast forward for a bunch of years, and I was touring around playing a Les Paul for years and years and years. And then in 2006, I decided to make a change, a big change, and I went from Les Paul to a Telecaster, which is about as wide of a scope as you can get in terms of changing approach, sound, all of it, weight. um, and as soon as I started doing some research about Telecasters, obviously Danny Gatton is in the top 5 names that you're going to come across.
Mm-hmm.
And started to dive in and again, sort of had the same experience. Checked out some studio records and kind of was like, okay, I think some of the production of the studio records maybe turned me off a little bit.
Super 80s vibe.
Yeah, something about like the snare drum sounds, and
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't really connecting. And then I somehow started to find some, back then it was like bootleg burned CDs somebody gave me, which then went on to become called a record that you can get still, I think, called Unfinished Business, which is a
Yep.
Oh yeah.
collection of live bootleg recordings. And that stands for me between that and the YouTube clips of him playing in bars around DC early on before he was discovered. That to me that's the stuff. That's
Yeah.
the Danny Gatton stuff.
And it's interesting that so many people identify him with the Telecaster. But when you think back to his really early time, Redneck Jazz Explosion, he was on a Les Paul. And then another big video clip on YouTube that I love watching is his Austin City Limit stuff, where he's playing a Gibson for the rockabilly stuff, and then the Telecaster, it's always in the mix, but for me, it's funny you say that it took, almost getting into a Telecaster to really reconnect with that, because some of my favorite stuff of his was not played on Telecaster. When you hear the records like with Buddy Emmons, and I love it if you've seen video clips where he's just wearing the red shirt that says Danny Gatton on it in white letters, and then Buddy has one that says Buddy Emmons. I don't know if people got him mixed up or what, but that Redneck Jazz stuff, which you can find on his Bandcamp, and I want to give a shout out to Danny's. I'm assuming this is an official Bandcamp. It looks official to me.
Yeah.
That you can get both Redneck Jazz Explosion records. You can get Unfinished Business, Funhouse, Portraits, In Concert, which was his last ever show, last ever gig. Untouchable, the Relentless album that you talked about with Joey DiFrancesco, and one of his probably the earliest ones, Danny Gatton and the Fat Boys, American Music, which I don't think is available digitally. It looks like on here, but that to me, because there's only a handful, 3 records on streaming right now. Those are all of his major label stuff. Elmira, 88 Elmira Street and Cruisin' Deuces, and I think there was another one on
that
there.
I sent you that live Robert Gordon thing is on there.
Yep, the live Robert Gordon thing.
That's his Danny the Humbler.
Yes, and both of the Blazing Telecasters records with Tom Principato.
Right.
And
yeah,
that basically is like his, he tragically died pretty young. And so that's basically his entire discography. I mean, outside of whatever kind of bootlegs, which a lot of these, like what you were saying, Scott, about Unfinished Business and The Humbler, what you sent me earlier, Nick. I mean, those started life as just bootleg cassette tapes
Right.
that people were trading back and forth.
Yeah. And they sound amazing. I think
Yeah.
that there must have been a scene, there must have been something going on in DC, because I don't know if you guys know about it. When Charlie Parker was playing around New York City, there was a guy who did a very primitive version of live taping named
Right.
Dean Benedetti, and he collected all of these Charlie Parker solos, and he would drag his probably huge recording rig to like Birdland,
Mm.
and then just hit record when Charlie Parker started soloing, and that was it, and then he'd hit stop, so it's just these recordings of just Charlie Parker solos. And I feel like the guys in DC were doing the same thing with Danny, but with VHS cassette
Yeah. Yeah.
clips, because there's so many clips
Yeah.
of him playing at like the 8x10 or all these classic Baltimore DC clubs. And the footage is just, I mean, it's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible guitar playing, so consistently jaw-dropping.
It's funny. So your story about like hearing Danny and taking time to get into him, for me, those clips are part of it. That I would hear, probably the first way that I like consciously heard Danny Gatton's playing was videos that people would show me, but it would be like him playing with a beer bottle or like playing with a mic stand or something. And like, I thought that stuff was cool, but it didn't really like do anything. I was like, okay, that's not like, that's funny and fun, but I didn't really get like his vocabulary or his whole sound from these clips of him playing. So that it was almost like to the detriment of me like getting into his playing. And then I also heard like 88 Elmira Street, and like production wise it was initially turned off. It had a similar
Yeah.
thing with that. And then when I finally heard, probably was like I watched one of the instructional videos and was like, damn, where do I find him playing like this? And then Redneck Jazz Explosion and stuff like that. And then that opened up like realizing exactly what he was capable of and what his playing was about. And then I got really into it. But yeah, it was I had the clips. I just see little tidbits of him just like doing shtick on his telly.
And you could just imagine like how great all these clips we're seeing, like seeing him in a club. I bet you he plays loud as hell. I bet you the treble on his amp will cut your face off.
Yeah.
And just being in the front row and just feeling the presence of him come off. I mean, there's only a few guitar players I've said probably I could imagine would feel that way. Derek Trucks would be one of them, where you just feel this energy coming off of them as they're playing. That you're just like, I don't even know what's happening right now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like watching him, some of those YouTube clips. There's one in particular where you can almost see it hit him. It's like he just becomes possessed,
Yeah.
and there's a clip of him playing at a small bar called Gallagher's in DC, and he's sitting in front of a dartboard. They're playing Ray Charles, What's My Name? Is that it? What's My
what
Name?
I
Say My
say,
Name. What I Say.
what I say.
Thank you, Jason, for the assist. He said, what I say? And he plays probably like a 7 or 8 minute guitar solo, and it's just I mean, it's perfect. Like all of the fundamentals are textbook. The sound. He goes through each chorus. He's kind of switching what room you're in. He switches the pickup here and there. He's clearly thinking rockabilly on this chorus, and then he's thinking more upper extension jazz harmony on the next one. Then the band drops out, and he does this whole walking bass line thing, and it's all just perfect. And and then he finishes, and it sounds like from the round of applause, it sounds like there's about like 18 people there, and he's just sitting in a corner in front of a dartboard playing for a band. This was just like clearly just like another night for him. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
big moment where he was turning on. This was how tuned in this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Incredible.
mean, it is incredible. Yeah.
So when you got into really studying his playing, and I have a couple of this too. It started with those instructional videos, and to me, there's one he did called Strictly Rhythm Guitar that is kind of hard to find, but bootleg or not, do what you can to find it, because for me, I probably took 3% of what I learned from that video and turned it into 80% of what I play on a typical gig in terms of rhythm guitar stuff. I mean, it's just little things that now I see little chord shapes or little ways to play, 1-4-5 or whatever. Like almost all of that for me was traced back to that video.
Wow.
I mean, because it's just him sitting on a stool with that mother of toilet seat Perloid Telecaster.
It's crazy looking Tele, yeah.
Crazy looking Tele, and just playing rhythm guitar and really just kind of breaking down stuff. And he doesn't play anything, like some of his rhythm parts are damn near impossible to play, just like some of his lead stuff is. But he didn't focus on the lead stuff. He really focused on, and it's not like the Yngwie video where it's like, let me slow that down for you. It wasn't like that. He really broke it down. And for me, only playing a couple years at that point, by the time I got my hands on it, that was like a turning point in my playing, was seeing that video.
Oh, that's awesome.
Have you seen those videos, Nick? There's a couple of them.
I saw, so Strictly Rhythm Guitar, I may have seen some of it before, but you told me to go check that out earlier. That's the second of his Hot Licks videos. The first one I've seen a bunch of times.
Is that the one where that's the one where he's sitting on the stool and there's those lights, like a chorus line lights, Broadway lights behind him or something?
Yes. Yeah, that one I know well.
Tried
to get stuff from there and not played it fast enough and all that.
That's the video where you learn the mystery train lick.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. That's the video he breaks that. It's amazing how he turns off the delay, the slap back, and then plays it. You're like, oh, that's not too difficult. And then you play it, and then he flips the switch, and it sounds like, oh, well, that's it.
Yeah,
that's
just opens up.
It's just the slap back.
Yeah. That first video has one of the best tidbits I've ever gotten out of any instructional video, too, that I use all the time, where he talks about how when he's traveling, if you fly with your guitar, you have to detune it for it to be safe. And every time that he would get to a hotel room, first thing he would do, because he didn't want his guitar to be out of tune for longer than it needed to be, he would pick up the phone, and the dial tone is an F. And he would tune his guitar, to the first fret, and then tune the rest of the guitar off that. And I do that every time I fly all the time, and I do that every time. I think of Danny Gatton every time I walk into a hotel room.
Kids these days don't know what a dial tone is, Scott.
You know what I know. Now hotels,
you just have a tuner.
Not all of them have phones
now, right?
Yeah, you get an app. They got an app for that.
They got an app. Yeah. So what, on a technical level, Scott, what were the things that you were trying to cop from him during that time of rediscovery when you had your hands on an actual Telecaster?
Well, really, I think that I was really taken by his command of rhythm first and foremost, because everything is always just it's just in the right place. Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. A lot of his right hand, I think that I might be making it up, but I thought that he had some sort of history with the banjo or banjo rolls, something.
100%. 100%.
He did, right? Because that really blew my mind.
The real hybrid picking stuff was.
I was just going to say, like, when he is breaking down on that first video, that first Hot Licks video in particular, he's breaking down some of the, like, Chet Atkins kind of sounding stuff and that he's doing, and where he's playing the melody here, and he's got the chord in the middle, and he's picking out a bass line. That stuff was just a total mystery to me at that point, and I saw it as a real good challenge. And I don't know if anybody does it to that degree of precision that he does, right? I mean, it's so insane.
Much rockabilly. I mean, he was a rockabilly guitar player who could do everything else, really, to me. I think, like, when you hear his stuff on that Robert Gordon, the Humbler thing, but then I think the thing we can point people to immediately is the Sun medley on, is it 88 Elvira or Cruisin' Deuces? One of those two. But yeah, the Sun medley on Cruisin' Deuces, second track. It's the third, I want to say, because they do 3 different tunes, and he takes a solo on each one. And I think it's the third solo he takes. He does this banjo roll lick that is like, it's sextuplets, right? It's so fast. And with the slapback, and it's like, how, I remember just listening to that lick, I was like, that's impossible.
Like, how does a human?
Right, it's impossible because it's so clean, right?
It's so clean, and it's so in time with the slapback. That's the thing. it's like to get that slapback delay time dialed in just right is kind of tough. It's not so much like an on-off thing. He knew with the tempo of this song, I needed my slapback, and I'm guessing he probably just tuned it by ear, just did it
Right.
and found it.
Well, for
And
years he had that slapback thing on the Les Paul,
the
right?
Magic
He had
Dingus
a
box, the
there you go.
Magic Dingus box, man.
That's what it was called. That's it.
Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, like why, and like that to me is still a mystery. That to me is still a mystery. Like, what does that thing do? Because nowadays we're just like, yeah, we'll just put a slapback echo on,
Right.
But he
Right.
had the Magic Dingus box, and like for me, I got the same thing from you, Scott, that you got. Is the hybrid picking thing, and then the other thing I got is this way he did like tremolo, like faux tremolo picking. Is you see it really clearly on the Austin City Limits show. Is he has his pick in his finger like this, and he's playing, and then he'll turn his hand to the side and do this, and he'll brush the strings with his middle finger.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it just right, it sounds like a more even way of tremolo picking a chord, let's say, without having to actually pick it. You just turn your hand to the side and brush it like that. And I remember distinctly picking that up from him for sure. Man, this is just getting me excited about listening to Danny Gatton now. I should have brought my Telecaster in today. My gosh.
So something I want to think about, like for me, it's like I feel like with Danny, Roy Buchanan is like often where I end up talking about, often who I end up talking about when I'm talking about Danny Gatton. I feel like I need to talk about the two of them together, and this is Danny's episode, so we don't have to talk about the two of them together. But I think it's interesting to differentiate the two of them and the two of their playing, because I feel like so much of that there's this Venn diagram where the middle has a lot of shared vocabulary, but there's so much that's separate between them too. So I don't know. How do you think about the difference between the two of them? For me, it's like Danny has the country jazz thing like way more, whereas Roy is coming from this like more of a blues kind of playing. Like they're both coming that ultimately like their style is Telecaster, but it's like it's two different approaches, right?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead,
Danny
Scott.
swings, right?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like, I mean, maybe this is off point, but to me, when I think about Roy Buchanan, I think of more of like almost like Robert Johnson, like Delta blues spirit, where
Yeah.
it's more of like a gospel-y thing or something almost, where it's a much more vocal sounding kind of guitar playing, right? Where you can like you can hear him singing through the guitar as if he were a vocalist. And you can hear Gatton he's singing through the guitar too. But one of the things, to me, the other thing besides technique, the biggest thing about Gatton is the vocabulary, the amount of vocabulary he had. It was like he was like an antenna that he could recall everything that he ever heard at any moment and just catch it flying through the air. And then there was no latency from it going straight from his imagination directly to his hands.
Yeah.
And he could just execute it perfectly. And I don't think of Roy Buchanan like that at all.
No.
Both equally moving and inspiring, but very different sort of approaches.
I think when you hear a track like Harlem Nocturne or Blues Newburgh, those are the tracks to me that you can really hear Roy's influence on Danny.
Yeah.
Especially that crazy arpeggio that opens for the head to Harlem Nocturne.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That singing just almost on the edge of feedback note that's at the peak of that melody. You're just like, whew.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is specifically why I wanted to bring up Roy Buchanan, is the way that the two of them, because I feel like this is something that is more obviously talked about when you're talking about Roy Buchanan, but needs to be talked about with Danny too, which is just like Telecaster as its own instrument and using it as this expressive thing, volume swells, all that stuff that that model of guitar is capable of doing. Scott, we talked about this when I interviewed you about you keep your volume between 2 and 4, and that blows my mind. But then when I saw you with Lamp, it's like I hear you when you open that volume up all the way. It's like now, I was listening for it, like I hear that there. And I feel like that, like you hear this in Roy is like my go-to place for thinking about that and that expressive vocal thing. But like listening to Danny the past day, where I've like really been listening to a lot of Danny Gatton, and then thinking about how that's just like such a part of the way that he approaches the instrument, his physical touch on the instrument, is there's all this other stuff that we're talking about in there, but his ability to be like super expressive with the Telecaster is such an important part of like what is so incredible about his playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like we talked about, Nick, to me, the Telecaster, as I got more into the Telecaster, it became very apparent that versatility was
Yeah.
like kind of just limitless to whatever your imagination can come up with. You
Yeah.
can get it out of a Telecaster. And there is an amazing clip that I'm glad we're talking about it, because I thought that a clip that exists on YouTube worth checking out is Gatton on like it looks like a public access morning talk show, like, small town suburban thing. And, it's got some title like Chicken Pickin' Good or something, and he's the guest. And anyway, the guy says, wow, well, why? He asks him exactly that. He's like, why a Telecaster? And then Gatton just does a textbook example of what we're talking about, where he says, well, if I want to play country music, I said it like this. And then he plays like 30 seconds of like perfect, Buck Owens sounding, stuff. And then he says, but then if I get called for a jazz gig, I can do this. And then, I mean, he sounds like Joe Pass. And then he says, if I want to do the blues, I do this. And then he sounds like Roy Buchanan, and he does it all within under a minute, and it's like by the end of it, you're just like watching it and you're like, it's like magic,
Yeah.
It's
This guy can
incredible.
do anything.
Incredible. Yeah. And he just knew how to get it out of that. He's playing the 53 Telecaster in that clip that I think was kind of his workhorse guitar. But I mean, it's also, he couldn't look more nonchalant about it.
Yeah, right.
It's just
And-
falling out of the guy,
I saw that Joe Bonamassa just bought his amp.
Oh, wow. What was it?
Pause a second while I look this up. I should have looked this up before. It's on his Instagram. Anyways, I don't know what it is. It just has a cover sitting on it. But yeah, Joe Bonamassa did just recently, and he calls Danny like his guitar teacher. So I don't know. I obviously they knew each other and played together a bit. Of course, there's clips of that on there. I've never heard Joe talk about like what the extent of, I'm guessing at that level, it's not really like formal lessons, just like they probably got together and played a couple times, and whatever Danny was spitting out, Joe was absorbing, just like that.
I will say, as a outspoken not Joe Bonamassa fan, that the only thing that I've ever heard from Joe Bonamassa that I've liked is clips of him playing like Danny Gatton. There are some videos on his Instagram where I saw he's just sitting on a couch and he plays some Danny Gatton stuff, and I'm like, that sounds great. That's awesome.
There it is.
Otherwise, his music I have no use for any of it. But when he plays like Danny Gatton, it is impressive, and he does do that convincingly. Yeah.
The other thing I got from Danny, I never really seen anybody do this, is the double stop hammer-ons. He'll hammer on real quick the double stops. You know what I mean? And it sounds like, old Les Paul Mary Ford or whatever, like, or Les Paul, the double track guitars, but he's just doing it, which I'm sure if somebody were to ask him, like, where'd you learn that? He's like, well, I just listened to the Les Paul stuff and I just thought that was one guitar, so I just learned it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a couple people, Scotty Anderson, he does that stuff, and it's so fast and so fluid with the double stops. It just, I can't believe that it's real. That when I watch a video of him playing, I think Red Volcare plays some of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, I'm such a sucker for that. If I could I don't know. It never sounds right when I do it with my fingers.
So, if we had to point somebody to a particular part of Danny's discography, and we're all going to answer this question, where would you point them first? Scott, we'll let you go first.
I would steer people. I would go with YouTube. I'm sticking with my I go with the early stuff concept here, and I would go to. There's a version of him playing Sleepwalk
Mm.
Oh, dude.
that is. It looks like it's in a small club. I don't know. I'm assuming it was in DC somewhere. He's playing through two deluxes on milk crates, and there's about 18 bottles of beer across the tops of the two amps. The whole thing is just so vibey.
Mhm.
And he kind of turns around at the beginning and he sort of counts it off, but like not really. The whole thing could not look more nonchalant and just easy for this guy. And what he plays, it seems like it's not, he certainly doesn't look like he's playing anything that's like prearranged. It looks like he's just kind of playing it how he's feeling it in the moment. And he plays everything that you could play over that song in like a 4-minute clip. I mean,
I
it's
am
just
familiar
like
with
it
that
just
video. It's unbelievable.
you know that video, right? It's just like, I mean, the first time I saw that, I was like leveled at the
Yeah.
end. It was just like, how is it even possible? You know?
Did it
I
make
give
you
up.
want to go?
I can't do it.
Did it make you want
Right.
to go, Richie? Nothing. Come on.
No.
What is that?
Richie from La Bamba, where that
Oh.
Sleepwalk's playing. He's on the bridge.
Right, right.
Richie, come on, guys.
No, I
I
mean,
haven't seen La Bamba since I was a kid.
that clip actually, Nick, had the opposite effect on me because after I had a few years, frankly, to
Mhm.
digest that clip and watch it, we started doing it in Wolf. Kind of my
Oh,
like
nice.
work. Yeah, we kind of did like our poor man's version of Danny Gatton. And we got some nice compliments and people loved it. And that's just such a classic guitar song
Oh, yeah.
choice, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's desert island guitar instrumentals, but that would be where I would say just watch this and you would have an idea of like sort of what you're dealing with Danny Gatton at the end of it.
Dig it. All right, Nick.
I think I'm going Redneck Jazz Explosion.
Mm.
That for me is that's probably the Danny Gatton I've listened to the most. It's all there. Him and Buddy, their ability to sound like each other on that album really gets me. Like if you tune out and you just like take, if I'm driving and I stop, like I'm not, I have to follow directions or something, and I'm not like exact. I can come back out, refocus, and listen in for a second and not be sure which one of them I'm listening to. Like,
It's because
before I
Buddy's-
can identify like a slide or a fretted thing or something, it can just confuse me for a second. And I think that that's so cool that those guys had that shared language so much and shared sound together. And it's like that those just sound like the most fun gigs. Like of all guitar gigs, like what could be more fun than like hearing that in person?
And to me, I count that to two things. One is Buddy's intonation.
Oh, dude,
Is
yeah,
undefeated.
right.
Undefeated. Like if you hear, there's the Buddy Emmons album, Steel Guitar, just right, where it has all the jazz tunes, where he's playing Olio.
Yeah,
you're just like,
so good.
It's
Come on,
outrageous.
right?
Right.
And then how well Danny can bend in tune, which sounds like a fundamental thing.
Yeah,
it's not. You know what I mean? Like it's surgical. Like we all. I mean, if you heard all three of us bend a note, and we could be in tune, but they'll all sound a little different because we all have our little inconsistencies or whatever here and there. When Danny bend a note, it's like I'm going to point A to point B, and that's it. And here I am, and I'm going right where I need to go next.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Maybe I'd be willing to bet Danny probably learned a whole lot from Buddy, playing with Buddy. How could you not? First of all,
right.
But I mean, those kind of little things that when you're playing next to somebody like Buddy Emmons, you can't.
Yeah,
you can't slack
right.
on it.
And both those guys had a vocabulary that was like jaw dropping. Like I can't really. The only other guy I can come up with is like Joe Pass, who, when you're listening to him, every little lick and every line, you're like, oh yeah, that line, right? That little melody, right? Like
yeah,
that tone for this passage. It's like they would just string that together for like a whole night of those moments. I don't know how it's I don't know how it's done.
No. All right, I'm gonna
All right,
go
yeah, what do you got?
with neither one of y'all's choice. I'm gonna go with 88 Elmira Street. And I know
Okay.
that we've talked about it a couple times. Production, probably not the thing, but his
I don't mind it now.
I don't mind it now either. No, I can get through it now. I was listening to it today.
And that Quiet Village on there is I
Mm.
really
Quiet
enjoy
Village.
that.
Yeah.
And I'd go 1A, 1B. I'd go 88 Elmira Street and Relentless. Because to me,
It's cheating a
that's-
little bit to pick two, but go ahead.
and nobody said one. I said, where would you point them? You can pick as many as you want. We make the rules around here. So, but like nobody really. Oh, here's another album. Hold on, that we have not mentioned yet. I think Nick, you and I have talked about this before. New York Stories.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You guys know
Jazz
that one?
record. Jazz
with
record.
about
Joshua
that.
Redman.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's so crazy. They
That-
just feel like they're from different time periods.
I know. So I would say New York Stories. I'm going 3. New York Stories, Relentless. Which New York Stories. I'm not even sure if that's streaming. I mean,
I don't think it is. Yeah.
Mm.
maybe it is. We're gonna know here in a second. Yes, it is.
Oh.
Okay.
Now, here's the lineup. Oof, man. Danny Gatton, Bobby Watson, Roy Hargrove, Joshua Redman, Frank Amsalam, Charles Fambro, and Euron Israel.
Wow.
And
Fanbro.
Wow.
the 2 tracks off that, Dolly's Ditty and One for Lenny, are the 2 that I remember because I came across that record at the library. Shout out public libraries for contributing
Yes.
to
Hell yeah.
turning kids on to stuff they can take a chance on and also burning some stuff in the meantime.
Yeah.
But I picked up that record because of the cover. The cover is Danny's Telecaster.
Yeah.
You know, I had never heard of Roy Hargrove or Joshua Redman or Bobby Watson. Never heard of them. But hearing him play with those cats was incredible. Blue Note 92 came out in 92.
92. Mm.
And then Relentless with Joey DiFrancesco. That's
such a great record.
I mean, such a
Yeah.
great, like, I feel like Danny was really looking for jazz players who could really push him.
yeah.
He found him.
And
Mission
yeah,
accomplished.
Joey is a good match.
Joey was a great match. I really wish. I don't know
Somebody
if they ever
with like
toured that.
uncannily blazing technique.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I don't know if they ever toured that record or not, or if they really played any gigs. But man, just I would love to see I would watch a 2-hour documentary on the making of Relentless any day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
There's no footage of that floating around. I've looked on YouTube, but
think
you
so.
know,
Yeah.
I want to
search.
say I might have read somewhere that they just popped in and recorded, and that was it.
Blasted.
That was that.
That was it.
Mm.
That was it.
Man.
They do have a documentary in the works, or it's finished, called The Humbler. If you look that up, it's not out yet. I think it's going to be streaming this fall somewhere. Hopefully,
They've been talking about it for a while.
They've been
and
working
there is
on
a
it for
trailer
a
up.
long time.
They did a few showings around DC. I think it's done,
Oh.
and they've done like a few
Yeah.
private showings down in DC. Because
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. I kicked into the the making of the GoFundMe or whatever they were running.
Yeah.
But,
Oh yeah. But yeah, I cannot wait to see. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing that more than the Minecraft movie.
Bold statement.
That is. Well, when you have teenagers living in your house, Scott, you know all about Steve's hot lava chicken. I'll tell you that.
I don't know what you
I
just
have
said.
no
Exactly.
idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. People know. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we go, tell us what is happening with you. What are your plans for the next couple of months? Where can people check out your music and see you play?
Oh man, well, fellas, this was great. Thank you so much for having me. I play with Joe Russo's Almost Dead. We're very easy to find, and I'm playing with Russ Lawton and Ray Pichkowski, which a lot of people know from Trey Anastasio's band, but we're playing as an organ trio called Lamp, and
I just
we're
saw
staying
you guys
busy.
play. Endorsement right there. Go see Lamp. That show in Asbury Park was unbelievable, and everybody should go check it out.
That was a good night. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for coming out. I have no complaints. I'm staying very busy, and I've got scottmetzger.com for all things in Metzgerville.
We can't wait for that Danny Gatton tribute show.
Oh man, I would love it. I've been Jim Weeder has gotten in touch a few times, sort of threatening me to invite him to be part of one of his. They do Masters of the Telecaster
Oh,
gigs
dude.
from time to time with G.E. Smith. He does it,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
and they have my buddies Andy Hess and Josh Dion as the rhythm section, and I think they just like get their telly on all night.
Oh
And,
man, yeah. I could
maybe
totally
one of these
see.
days.
I could totally see Lamp busting out a Danny Gatton tune.
We've talked about Sleepwalk. We have talked about it, but it would be out of left field with the sound of the band. But who knows? One of these days, maybe
Yeah.
this
Quiet
will
Village might fit
this will
in.
fit. Quiet Village would fit in. That's a really
Groovy. Yeah, that'd be cool.
totally. We can use
If you
that as
do
a
that, I want to see a video though.
you. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, of course, well
All right,
documented.
Scott. Thanks again, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
fellas.
Scott.
Have a good one.
See ya. All right. Thank you to Scott Metzger for joining us today, telling us about his thoughts on Danny Gatton. If you get a chance, go check Scott out sometime this summer, either with J-Rad or with Lamp. I totally recommend seeing Lamp, having just seen them. And I got to check out J-Rad when they come around too.
Unless you live in Iowa, totally go check them out.
That's right. That's right. All right. Thanks again to Keeley for sponsoring today's episode. Head over to rkfx.com for more about Keeley. And wherever you're checking us out, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review the 100 Guitarist podcast.
That's right. You can get at us at 100guitarists at premierguitar.com or give us a call, voicemail, text 319-423-9734.
We'll see you next week.